I'm Marcus Thompson, 34, a single father working 2 jobs to keep my son Tyler and me afloat. After 3 years of building a life together, my ex-wife Sarah suddenly reappeared, demanding I sign over full custody in court. She stood there in her designer suit, flanked by expensive lawyers, painting me as an unfit father who couldn't provide the stability she could offer. The shame burned through me as I watched the judge's skeptical expression. I felt like I was losing everything that mattered. But when the judge asked Tyler what he wanted, my 8-year-old son stood up with a courage I didn't know he possessed. What he said next would expose the truth about Sarah's real motives and change our lives forever. The divorce papers still sat in my kitchen drawer, yellowed at the edges from 3 years of handling. I pulled them out that night after the hearing, my hands shaking as I read the custody agreement again. Joint custody, it said. Sarah had signed it willingly, even eagerly, back when she couldn't wait to escape our cramped apartment and Tyler's midnight crying spells. I remembered the day she left. Tyler was 5, clutching his dinosaur toy as his mother packed her designer bags, gifts from her new boyfriend Richard. She'd kissed Tyler's forehead absently, promising to see him real soon, then walked out without looking back. The silence that followed was deafening. "Where's Mommy going?" Tyler had asked, his voice small and confused. "She needs some space, buddy." "But you've got me." "Okay, always got me." That was 3 years ago. 3 years of birthday parties Sarah missed, school, plays she didn't attend, and nights when Tyler would ask if Mommy was coming home. I'd learned to recognize the signs the way Tyler's shoulders would slump when other kids talked about their moms. How he'd draw pictures of just 2 stick figures instead of 3. But we'd built something together, Tyler and me. A life that worked. He'd stopped asking about Sarah after the first year, and I'd stopped expecting her to call. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our small victories. Tyler made honor roll last semester, and I took him to Chuck E. Cheese to celebrate. We were okay. We were more than okay then. She showed up in that courtroom like she'd never left, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her lawyer, one of 3, had spoken about providing stability and ensuring Tyler's future, as if the future Tyler and I had been building meant nothing. The worst part was watching Tyler's face when he saw her. The confusion, the hope, the hurt all mixed together in his 8-year-old eyes. He'd whispered, "Daddy, why is Mommy here?" I didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. Now, sitting in our small kitchen with those divorce papers spread before me, I felt the weight of what we were up against. Sarah had resources I could never match. She had Richard's money, his connections, his influence. She had lawyers who specialized in making working-class fathers disappear from their children's lives. But she didn't have what Tyler and I had. She didn't have the bedtime stories, the homework help, the scraped knees I'd bandaged, or the fears I'd chased away. She didn't have 3 years of Tyler calling me when he was scared, or 3 years of being the one who showed up. I folded the papers carefully and put them back in the drawer. Tomorrow, I'd have to find a way to fight. Tonight, I just needed to hold on to what we'd built. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., just like every weekday for the past 3 years. I'd learned to wake up before it buzzed, my internal clock attuned to Tyler's needs. He was still sleeping in the twin bed across our shared bedroom, his hair messy against the pillow, one arm hanging off the side clutching the worn stuffed elephant that had been his companion since he was 3. Our apartment wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that barely fit our small table. But it was ours. The walls were covered with Tyler's artwork from school, his honor roll certificates, and photos of us at the park, at baseball games, at the zoo. Every surface told the story of our life together. I started the coffee and packed Tyler's lunch while he got ready for school. We had our morning routine down to a science. Tyler would brush his teeth while I made his sandwich. Then we'd switch. He'd eat breakfast while I got dressed for work at Murphy's Auto Shop. We were a team, efficient and synchronized. "Dad, can you help me with my math tonight?" Tyler asked. Over his cereal, his report card from last month still pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet. Mrs. Peterson had written a note in the margin. "Tyler is such a joy to have in class. His positive attitude and strong work ethic are remarkable. You should be very proud." I was proud, more than proud. Tyler had adapted to our life with a resilience that sometimes broke my heart. He never complained about sharing a bedroom or about me working late on weekends. He'd do his homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner, chattering about his day, his friends, his dreams of becoming a paleontologist. "Of course, buddy, we'll tackle those fractions together." The drive to Riverside Elementary took 12 minutes. Just enough time for Tyler to tell me about his upcoming science project on dinosaurs. He'd been saving his allowance to buy a fossil kit, counting out quarters and dimes with the seriousness of a banker. "Mrs. Peterson says I can present first," he said, bouncing in his seat. "She says I know more about dinosaurs than anyone in 3rd grade. I watched him run toward the school building, his backpack bouncing, and felt that familiar mixture of pride and protectiveness. He was thriving despite everything, despite Sarah's absence, despite our financial struggles, despite the uncertainty that had marked his early years. At the shop, I buried myself in work. Murphy had been good to me, flexible when Tyler was sick, understanding when school events ran late. He'd even given me a raise last year, saying I was the most reliable mechanic he'd ever had. It wasn't much, but combined with my weekend security job at the mall, it was enough to keep us afloat. The afternoons were my favorite part of the day. Tyler would walk to the shop after school, settling into the small office with his homework while I finished up. He'd show me his assignments, tell me about his friends, share the small dramas of elementary school life. Sometimes he'd help me organize tools or sweep the floor, chattering away about his day. "Dad, Jake's mom is coming to career day next week," Tyler said one afternoon, looking up from his math worksheet. "She's a nurse. What do you think I should say you do?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at my grease-stained hands, my worn work clothes, and for a moment felt that familiar sting of inadequacy. But then I saw Tyler's face, expectant, curious, without a trace of shame or embarrassment. "I fix things," I said finally. "I take things that are broken and make them work again." Tyler nodded seriously. "That's cool. Can I tell them about the time you fixed Mrs. Chen's car for free when she couldn't afford it?" My throat tightened. "If you want to, I will. Mrs. Peterson says it's important to help people." That evening, we sat at our small kitchen table working on fractions. Tyler's tongue stuck out slightly as he concentrated, the same expression he'd had as a toddler learning to stack blocks. The lamp cast a warm circle of light around us, and I could hear the neighbor's television through the thin walls. "I got it," Tyler exclaimed, showing me his work. "1/2 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. That's right, buddy. You're getting good at this." He beamed at me, and I thought about what the lawyers had said in court, about stability, about providing for Tyler's future. They didn't understand that stability wasn't just about money or big houses. It was about being there when Tyler needed help with homework, about knowing his favorite breakfast, about understanding his fears and dreams. Later, after Tyler had fallen asleep, I sat in the living room looking at the bills spread across the coffee table. The rent, utilities, groceries, Tyler's school supplies, it all added up, but we made it work. We always made it work. I picked up Tyler's latest drawing. From the coffee table, a picture of the two of us at the park, both of us smiling, both of us complete. At the bottom, he'd written in his careful third-grade handwriting, "Me and Dad, best team ever." Sarah's lawyers could talk all they wanted about what Tyler deserved, but Tyler already had what he deserved: a father who loved him, who showed up, who made him feel safe and valued every single day. The report card was still on the fridge. Mrs. Peterson's note, a testament to the life we'd built together. Tyler was happy, healthy, and thriving. That had to count for something. Sarah stepped out of the black Mercedes, her heels clicking against the courthouse steps with practiced confidence. Everything about her screamed success: the tailored Armani suit, the designer handbag, the perfect manicure that had never seen a day of real work. She handed her business card to the court clerk with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sarah Mitchell Blackwood, Senior Associate, Blackwood, Sterling and Associates." It was hard to believe this was the same woman who used to live on ramen noodles and dreams of Broadway stardom. Back then, Sarah had worked at a coffee shop between auditions, coming home exhausted and bitter when another callback led nowhere. She'd blame her failures on everything: the casting directors who didn't understand her vision, the other actresses who had connections she lacked, the industry that favored youth over talent. "I'm wasting my life in this dump," she'd complained. One night, gesturing around our cramped apartment while Tyler slept in his crib, "I deserve better than this." When Tyler was born, I thought motherhood might change her perspective. For a while, it seemed like it had. She'd coo over him, post photos on social media, talk about being a mommy blogger, but the novelty wore off quickly. Late-night feedings became my responsibility. Diaper changes were too gross. When Tyler cried, she'd hand him to me with an exasperated sigh. The transformation started when she met Richard at an upscale charity event she'd talked her way into. Richard Blackwood, 302, a pharmaceutical fortune, senior partner at one of the city's most prestigious law firms, and exactly the kind of man Sarah had always believed she deserved. Within 6 months, she was filing for divorce. Now, 3 years later, Sarah lived in a world I could barely imagine. Richard's mansion in the hills had 8 bedrooms, a pool, and a staff of 3. Sarah had traded her coffee shop apron for designer clothes and charity galas. She'd gone back to school, earning her paralegal certification on Richard's dime, and now worked at his firm, making more in a month than I made in 6. But success hadn't softened her edges. If anything, it had sharpened them. "Tyler deserves advantages," she'd told the mediator during our first meeting. "Private school, tutoring, exposure to culture, and refinement. His father works in a garage. What kind of future can he provide?" The condescension in her voice was cutting, as if the 3 years of love, stability, and growth Tyler had experienced meant nothing because they'd happened in a modest apartment instead of a mansion. Richard enabled her transformation, perhaps even encouraged it. He needed the perfect political wife for his upcoming congressional campaign, and Sarah played the role beautifully. She'd learned to speak the language of influence and power, to navigate social circles where connections mattered more than character. "The boy would benefit from our resources," Richard had said during one tense phone conversation. "Better schools, better opportunities. You're limiting his potential. Their house was a showpiece all marble and crystal, with photos of Sarah and Richard at political fundraisers lining the hallways. But I noticed what was missing. There were no photos of Tyler, no evidence that a child had ever lived there, played there, or belonged there. Sarah had crafted an image of herself as the devoted mother who'd been forced to make the heartbreaking choice to leave her son with his father for the child's stability. She spoke at charity events about family values and children's welfare, painting herself as a woman who'd sacrificed her maternal instincts for the greater good. The truth was simpler. Tyler had never fit into the life she'd wanted. He was a reminder of her past, of the struggles she'd left behind. In Richard's world, children were accessories to be displayed at appropriate moments, well-dressed, well-behaved, and quiet. But now Richard's political ambitions had changed the equation. A successful congressional candidate needed a complete family image. Sarah, as the accomplished wife, was good, but Sarah as the devoted mother who'd reunited with her son would be even better. The timing is perfect. I'd overheard her tell someone on the phone outside the courthouse, Richard's announcement is next month. Having Tyler will show we're a real family. That's when I understood this wasn't about Tyler's welfare or what was best for him. This was about Sarah's image, Richard's campaign, and their carefully constructed facade of perfection. Tyler was just another accessory to complete the picture. The public defender's office smelled like stale coffee and desperation. I sat across from Linda Martinez, the court-appointed attorney who'd been assigned to my case, watching her flip through a stack of files that seemed to reach the ceiling. She was in her 50s, tired-looking, with kind eyes that had seen too many losing battles. "I'll be honest with you, Mr. Thompson," Linda said, pulling out a manila folder with my name scrawled across the top. "These custody modification cases are tough, especially when there's such a significant disparity in resources." She spread the court filing documents across her desks. Sarah's petition for full custody, complete with affidavits from character witnesses I'd never heard of, and a financial disclosure that made my head spin. Richard's annual income alone was more than I'd make in a lifetime. "They're claiming you can't provide adequate stability," Linda continued, reading from the filing. "Limited income, shared bedroom with the child, inability to fund educational opportunities and extracurricular activities." Each accusation felt like a punch to the gut. The shared bedroom as, if Tyler minded, sharing space with me. The limited incomes, if love could be measured in dollars. The educational opportunities as, if Tyler's honor roll grades meant nothing. "What about the fact that she abandoned him?" I asked. 3 years, Linda? She didn't even send birthday cards." Linda nodded sympathetically. "That's our strongest argument. But their legal team has already anticipated that. Look at this." She showed me another document, a psychological evaluation request. Sarah's lawyers wanted Tyler to undergo counseling, to assess any potential trauma from parental abandonment and determine the healthiest living arrangement for his emotional development. "They're going to argue that her absence was actually beneficial," Linda explained. "That she recognized she wasn't ready to be a mother, and made the responsible choice to step back until she could provide properly." The cynicism of it was breathtaking. They were going to twist Sarah's abandonment into an act of maternal wisdom. "What do we have?" I asked. Linda's expression softened. "We have Tyler's school records, excellent grades, perfect attendance, glowing teacher recommendations. We have your employment history, steady work, reliable income, no legal troubles. We have character witnesses from your neighbors, Tyler's teachers, your employer." She pulled out another folder, thinner than Sarah's but filled with genuine testimonials. Mrs. Peterson from Tyler's school had written a 3-page letter detailing my involvement in Tyler's education. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had documented how I'd helped her with groceries when her husband was in the hospital. Murphy had provided employment records showing my reliability and dedication. "The problem," Linda continued, "is that their legal team has resources we simply don't have. They can hire child psychologists, expert witnesses, investigators. They can drag this out until you're financially exhausted." I thought about my savings account, what little there was of it. The custody battle had already cost me more than I could afford, and we'd barely started. "Sarah's team is led by Patricia Sterling," Linda said, naming one of the city's most expensive family law attorneys. "She's won cases that seemed impossible. She knows how to present wealth and status as synonymous with good parenting." The intimidation tactics had already begun. Sarah's lawyers had sent threatening letters to my apartment, copying my employer, and even Tyler's school. They'd questioned my coworkers, trying to find any evidence of unreliability or misconduct. They'd even visited our neighborhood, talking to people who barely knew us. "They're trying to build a case that you're unstable," Linda explained. "Working 2 jobs means you're never home. Living paycheck to paycheck means you can't handle emergencies. They'll twist every aspect of your life to fit their narrative." I felt the weight of the system pressing down on me. This wasn't about justice or Tyler's best interest. It was about who could afford the better lawyers, who could present the more polished image. "But we have something they don't," Linda said, leaning forward. "We have the truth. Tyler is happy, healthy, and thriving in your care." No judge wants to remove a child from a loving, stable home just because the other parent has more money. She was trying to be encouraging, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. We both knew that in family court, presentation often mattered more than reality. The hearing is in 6 weeks, Linda said. I'll do everything I can to prepare, but you need to understand what we're up against. They'll try to make you look unfit, irresponsible, selfish. They'll paint Sarah as the mother who's finally ready to provide the life Tyler deserves. I left the meeting feeling like I was drowning. Outside the courthouse, I saw Sarah's legal team, 3 attorneys in expensive suits, briefcases full of strategies designed to destroy my relationship with my son. But as I drove back to pick up Tyler from school, I remembered something. Sarah's lawyers could buy experts and craft narratives, but they couldn't buy the bond Tyler and I had built. They couldn't manufacture 3 years of bedtime stories, homework, help, and unconditional love. The court filing documents in my passenger seat represented their strategy. But Tyler's happiness, his trust, his love, that was mine. Tyler had always been a thoughtful kid, but lately I'd caught him staring out the window with an expression too serious for an 8-year-old. His journal, a composition notebook with a dinosaur on the cover, had become his constant companion. Mrs. Peterson had encouraged all her students to keep journals, but Tyler had taken to it with an intensity that worried me. "What are you writing about, buddy?" I asked one evening, finding him hunched over the notebook at the kitchen table. "Just stuff," he said, closing it quickly, but I'd seen enough to know he was writing about the custody battle, about Sarah's sudden reappearance, about the confusion that came with having a mother who felt more like a stranger. I didn't push. Tyler had always processed things internally, working through emotions with the careful deliberation of someone much older, but I knew this situation was weighing on him in ways he couldn't fully articulate. The confusion had started the moment Sarah walked into that courtroom. Tyler had frozen, his small hand gripping mine tightly. He'd stared at her with a mixture of recognition and bewilderment, as if trying to reconcile the polished woman in the expensive suit with his memories of the mother who'd left. "She looks different," he'd whispered to me. She did look different. The Sarah who'd walked out 3 years ago had been struggling, tired, often angry. This Sarah was confident, composed, perfectly put together. But to Tyler, she was still the mother who'd missed his first day of school, his first lost tooth, his first home run in Little League. Later that week, Sarah had arranged a supervised visit, quartered time with Tyler at a neutral location. I'd watched through the window of the family services building as they sat across from each other in an sterile room. Sarah, trying to bridge 3 years of absence with awkward small talk. "How's school?" she'd asked. "Good," Tyler had replied, his voice small. "Are you still interested in dinosaurs?" "Yeah." The conversation had limped along like that for an hour. Sarah asking surface-level questions, Tyler giving minimal answers. She'd brought gifts, expensive toys that Tyler accepted politely but without enthusiasm. They sat between them like bribes, highlighting the distance rather than bridging it. That night, Tyler had climbed into my bed, something he hadn't done in months. "Dad, why did Mommy come back?" I'd struggled for an answer that was honest but age-appropriate. "She says she wants to be part of your life again, but she left," Tyler said simply. "She said she'd see me soon, but she didn't." The abandonment had shaped Tyler more than I'd realized. He'd learned early not to rely on promises from adults, to find security in routines and consistency rather than words. He'd built emotional walls to protect himself from disappointment. "I don't remember her very much," Tyler admitted one night while we were reading together. "Sometimes I think I do, but then I'm not sure if it's real or just from pictures." His journal entries, when I finally read them with his permission weeks later, revealed the depth of his internal struggle. "My mom came to court today. She looks fancy now." Dad looked scared. "I don't know why everyone is so upset. I like living with Dad. We have fun together, and he helps me with homework and makes good pancakes. Mom brought me a remote control helicopter. It's cool, but I don't know how to fly it. Dad would have gotten me a dinosaur book. He knows I like to read about paleontology." Dad looks sad, but he tries to hide it. "I wish Mom hadn't come back. Everything was good before." The wisdom in his words broke my heart. At 8 years old, Tyler understood something. The adults around him seemed to miss that love wasn't about expensive gifts or perfect appearances. It was about showing up, day after day, through the ordinary moments that make up a childhood. But Tyler also felt the weight of the adult conflicts surrounding him. He'd started having trouble sleeping, waking up with questions he couldn't quite formulate. "Dad, if I had to choose, would that hurt someone's feelings?" he asked one morning over breakfast. The question gutted me. No child should have to choose between parents. But Tyler was intuitive enough to understand that's what this was really about. "Nobody's asking you to choose, buddy," I said carefully. "The grown-ups are going to figure this out." But Tyler was smart. He'd overheard phone conversations, caught fragments of legal discussions, seen the stress lines around my eyes. He knew this was about him, about where he'd live, about who he'd call family. "I know what I want," he said quietly, not looking up from his cereal. "What's that?" "I want things to stay the same. I want to live here with you, and have dinosaur pancakes on Saturday mornings, and help you at the shop after school." I want Mom to be okay, but I don't want to live in her big house. It doesn't feel like home." The clarity in his voice was startling, while the adults around him argued about resources and opportunities. Tyler had cut through the noise to the essential truth. Home wasn't about size or luxury. It was about belonging, about feeling safe and loved and valued. But I also saw the burden this placed on him. Tyler felt responsible for the adults' emotions, for the conflict his very existence had created. He was 8 years old and already learning to protect others from his own feelings. "Can I tell the judge what I want?" Tyler asked one day, a question that would prove more prophetic than I realized. "If it comes to that," I said, hoping it wouldn't. But Tyler had already made up his mind. In his journal, in his heart, in the quiet certainty that sometimes comes to children who've been forced to grow up too fast, he knew exactly where he belonged. The decision to hire a private investigator nearly bankrupted me. I'd emptied my savings account, borrowed from my credit cards, and even asked Murphy for an advance on my paycheck. But Linda had been clear we needed something to level the playing field, some way to counter Sarah's polished narrative. "There's always more to the story," she'd said. "People don't just suddenly want custody after 3 years of absence. There's usually a deeper motivation." So I found myself sitting across from Jake Morrison, a former police detective who now worked private cases out of a cramped office above a pawn shop. Jake was in his 60s, gray-haired and weathered, with the kind of tired eyes that had seen enough human nature to surprise him anymore. "Custody cases are tricky," Jake said, reviewing the preliminary report he'd compiled after a week of investigation. "But there are already some interesting patterns emerging." He spread photos across his desk, surveillance shots of Sarah and Richard at various social events, newspaper clippings from charity, galas, real estate records, financial documents that painted a picture of wealth and influence. "Your ex-wife has certainly moved up in the world," Jake observed. "But here's what's interesting, the timeline doesn't quite add up." He showed me a series of newspaper photos spanning the past 6 months. Sarah and Richard at political fundraisers, speaking events, charity auctions. In every photo, they were presented as the perfect power couple, successful, sophisticated, committed to public service. "Richard Blackwood is positioning himself for a congressional run," Jake explained. "The announcement is scheduled for next month. But look at this." He pulled out a campaign strategy document. Somehow, Jake had gotten his hands on internal planning, materials that outlined Richard's political roadmap. "Family values are central to his platform," Jake read. "But there's a problem. Richard's been married twice before. No children from either marriage. Sarah brings youth and beauty to the ticket, but a devoted mother who's reunited with her son? That's political gold." The cynicism was breathtaking, but it made perfect sense. Sarah's sudden interest in Tyler wasn't maternal instinct, it was political strategy. "There's more," Jake continued, handing me a financial report. "Sarah's not as secure as she appears. Richard has a prenuptial agreement that's ironclad. If the marriage fails, she walks away with almost nothing." I studied the bank records Jake had somehow obtained. Sarah's personal finances were surprisingly precarious. She made good money at Richard's law firm, but her lifestyle expenses, diner clothes, spa treatments, the kind of maintenance required to be a political wife, consumed nearly everything she earned. "She's trapped," I realized. "She needs this marriage to work exactly, and nothing threatens a political marriage like scandal. Richard needs a perfect family image, and Sarah needs to prove she's worthy of being a politician's wife. A devoted mother trumps a gold digger every time." Jake showed me more photographs, candid shots of Sarah and Richard at private moments. In public, they were the perfect couple, but in these unguarded moments, the strain was visible. Richard's polite distance, Sarah's forced smiles, the careful choreography of a relationship built on mutual benefit rather than genuine affection. "But here's the most interesting part," Jake said, pulling out a thick folder. "I've been tracking their financial transactions, their social calendar, their private communications. They're planning a major media blitz around the custody announcement." He showed me email printouts, communications between Sarah's PR team, Richard's campaign manager, and various media contacts. They'd already scheduled interviews with family-friendly magazines, planned photo shoots featuring Sarah as the devoted mother, outlined a narrative of reunion and redemption. "They're going to use Tyler," I said. The full scope of their plan becoming clear, not just use him, exploit him. "Look at this proposed schedule." Jake showed me a calendar that mapped out Tyler's hypothetical new life: private school enrollment, tutoring sessions, tennis lessons, piano instruction, and most tellingly, carefully scheduled public appearances designed to showcase the Blackwood family's commitment to traditional values. "Your son would become a prop in a political campaign," Jake said bluntly. "Every soccer game, every school event, every family vacation would be calculated for maximum public relations impact." The preliminary report Jake handed me was devastating in its thoroughness. He'd documented Sarah's 3-year absence, her sudden interest coinciding perfectly with Richard's political ambitions, and the cold calculation behind their custody petition. But he'd also uncovered something else. Evidence that Sarah's claims about wanting to be Tyler's mother were hollow at best. She'd never once asked about Tyler's medical records, his school performance, his friends, or his interests during the initial custody meetings. Her questions had focused entirely on logistics school districts in Richard's neighborhood, private tutoring options, image consultants who specialized in political families. She doesn't want to be his mother, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. She wants to appear to be his mother. That's the distinction we need to make clear in court. Jake agreed. But we need more than this. We need evidence of her true motivations. Something that proves beyond doubt that Tyler's welfare isn't her primary concern. He closed the folder and looked at me seriously. I need more time, more resources. This is just the beginning. If we're going to beat their high-powered legal team, we need ammunition they can't explain away. I thought about my credit card balances, my empty savings, the loans I'd already taken, but I also thought about Tyler, about the life they were planning for him, a life where he'd be a carefully managed accessory to someone else's ambitions. Keep digging, I said. Whatever it costs. Jake nodded. There's always more to the story. Rich people always think they're untouchable, but everyone has secrets. Sarah and Richard are no different. As I left his office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began, and hope. For the first time, we had a strategy that went beyond defending against their attacks. We could go on the offensive, expose the truth behind their perfect facade. The preliminary report in my hands wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon. The threatening letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier in an envelope bearing the letterhead of Blackwood, Sterling, and Associates. I opened it standing in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hand, as I read words designed to destroy my world. Mr. Thompson, it began, it has come to our attention that your current employment and living situation may be inconsistent with providing adequate care for a minor child. The letter went on to detail concerns about my work schedule, my financial stability, and my inability to provide educational and social opportunities commensurate with Tyler's potential. But the real threat came in the final paragraph. We reserve the right to pursue all legal avenues, including investigation of your employment practices and living arrangements, to ensure Tyler's safety and well-being. It was legal intimidation, at its finest, carefully worded threats wrapped in concern for Tyler's welfare, but I understood the message clearly. They were going to try to destroy my job, my reputation, and my ability to provide for my son. The campaign had already begun. Sarah's lawyers had contacted Murphy's auto shop, claiming they needed to verify employment information for the custody case. Murphy had called me into his office that afternoon, his expression troubled. Marcus, I got some fancy lawyers asking questions about your work performance, your reliability, whether you've ever been late or called in sick, Murphy said, leaning back in his chair. I told them the truth. You're the best mechanic I've got. Never missed a day unless Tyler was sick. Always reliable. But I could see the concern in his eyes. Murphy ran a small business, and he couldn't afford legal troubles or harassment from high-powered attorneys. They also asked about Tyler coming here after school, Murphy continued. Whether it was appropriate to have a child in a workplace environment, whether you were properly supervising him. The implication was clear. They were trying to paint my arrangement with Tyler as neglectful, dangerous, inappropriate. Never mind that Tyler loved coming to the shop, that he did his homework in the office while I worked, that the other mechanics had become like uncles to him. The pressure extended beyond my workplace. Sarah's legal team had visited our apartment building, speaking with neighbors, asking pointed questions about noise levels, supervision, whether they'd ever seen Tyler unsupervised or distressed. They'd contacted Tyler's school, requesting meetings with teachers and administrators under the guise of ensuring continuity of care. Mrs. Peterson had called me after one such meeting, her voice tight with controlled anger. Mr. Thompson, I wanted you to know that some attorneys came to the school asking questions about Tyler, she said. They seemed more interested in finding problems than understanding Tyler's actual well-being. I want you to know that I told them the truth. Tyler is one of our most well-adjusted, happy children. But the damage was being done through sheer persistence and intimidation. The constant questions, the official inquiries, the implied threats, they were designed to create doubt, to make people wonder if there might be truth to the concerns being raised. The most insidious part was how they used Tyler himself. Sarah had requested additional supervised visits, each one carefully documented by court-appointed observers. During these visits, she'd quiz Tyler about his living conditions, his daily routines, his feelings about our apartment. Tyler, wouldn't you like to have your own room? She'd ask, while the court observer took notes. Tyler, don't you think it would be nice to go to a school with better programs? Tyler, doesn't Daddy seem tired all the time from working so much? Each question was designed to plant seeds of doubt, to make Tyler question the life we'd built together. After these visits, Tyler would come home confused and upset, carrying the weight of adult manipulation he couldn't fully understand. Dad, am I supposed to want a bigger room? He asked one night after a particularly difficult visit. You can want whatever you want, buddy, I said carefully, but wanting something and needing something are different things. The financial pressure was equally devastating. Legal fees were mounting faster than I could track them. Linda was doing her best on the court-appointed budget, but Sarah's team was billing thousands of hours, filing motion after motion, requesting evaluation after evaluation, H1 designed to drain my resources and energy. I'd started working extra shifts at the security job, coming home exhausted after Tyler was asleep, leaving early before he woke up. The irony wasn't lost on Min trying to defend my right to be Tyler's father. I was missing precious time with him. We need to respond to each of their motions, Linda explained during one of our increasingly frequent meetings. They're requesting psychological evaluations, home studies, financial disclosures, character investigations. It's a war of attrition. They're trying to exhaust us into submission. The most devastating blow came when Sarah's lawyers filed a motion requesting that Tyler's living arrangements be temporarily modified pending the outcome of the custody case. They wanted him moved to neutral housing, a foster care arrangement, that our shared bedroom and my work schedule created an unstable environment. They're trying to separate you from Tyler before the case even goes to trial, Linda explained. If they can establish that Tyler is thriving in alternative care, it strengthens their argument that he doesn't need you. I stared at the motion papers, feeling the full weight of their strategy. They weren't just trying to win custody, they were trying to sever my relationship with Tyler entirely, to prove that he could flourish without me. That night, I sat in Tyler's bed while he slept, watching his peaceful face in the dim light from the hallway. He looked so small, so vulnerable, so innocent of the adult machinations swirling around him. Sarah's lawyers could threaten my job, question my neighbors, and drain my bank account, but they couldn't touch what really mattered: the bond between Tyler and me, built through thousands of small moments, strengthened by unconditional love, and rooted in the simple truth that we belonged together. The threatening letter was still on my kitchen table, its legal language designed to intimidate and discourage. But as I looked at my sleeping son, I felt my resolve harden. They could pressure me all they wanted. I wasn't giving up. The petition started with Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B. She'd knocked on my door one evening, holding a clipboard and wearing the determined expression I'd seen when she'd organized the building's campaign to get the broken elevator fixed. "Marcus," she said, "we heard about your trouble with Tyler's custody. This is not right. You are good father. Everyone knows this." Behind her stood Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs, Mr. Kim from the end of the hall, and the Johnson family from across the courtyard. They'd organized themselves without any prompting from me, united by a shared sense of injustice. "We want to help," Mrs. Rodriguez said in her accented English. "We write letters, we go to court, we tell truth about you and Tyler." I was overwhelmed by their support. These were people who understood struggle, who recognized the difference between a parent who cared and one who simply had resources. They'd watched Tyler grow up in our building, seen our daily routines, witnessed the genuine love between us. The petition they'd created was handwritten on notebook paper, but it carried more weight than any legal document Sarah's team could produce. We, the undersigned residents of Maple Grove Apartments, wish to attest to the character of Marcus Thompson as a father and neighbor. Tyler Thompson is a happy, well-cared-for child who is loved and supported by his father. Marcus is reliable, kind, and always willing to help his neighbors. Tyler is polite, friendly, and clearly thriving in his current environment. 18 signatures followed, representing every family in our building, but the support extended beyond our apartment complex. Mrs. Peterson had rallied Tyler's teachers, creating a comprehensive portfolio of his academic achievements, behavioral reports, and social development assessments. She'd included photos from school events showing Tyler's participation and happiness, along with detailed observations about his emotional stability. "Tyler is one of the most well-adjusted children I've taught in 15 years. She'd written in her formal statement. "He demonstrates resilience, empathy, and confidence that clearly stems from a secure, loving home environment. His father's involvement in his education and extracurricular activities is exemplary." Murphy had gone even further. He'd closed the shop for an afternoon to take statements from our regular customers, people who'd interacted with Tyler over the years, who'd seen our relationship firsthand. "That boy adores his father," said Mrs. Williams, whose car I'd been servicing for 5 years. "I've watched them together, seen how respectful Tyler is, how happy he seems. Marcus has raised a good kid." Even some of the other mechanics had volunteered to testify. Big Eddie, who looked intimidating but had a soft spot for Tyler, had written a statement about how Tyler would help organize tools and sweep the shop, always eager to learn and contribute. "Kid's got good values," Eddie had said simply. "Respectful, hardworking, grateful for what he's got. That comes from good parenting." The groundswell of support was overwhelming, but it also highlighted the class divide that defined this custody battle. Sarah's character witnesses were prominent community members, wealthy donors, people with impressive titles and social standing. Our supporters were working-class people, neighbors, teachers, customers, friends whose testimonials carried the weight of genuine experience rather than social obligation. Linda was amazed by the response. "I've never seen community support like this in a custody case," she said, reviewing the stack of letters and statements that had poured in. These aren't form letters or obligatory references, these are heartfelt testimonials from people who actually know you and Tyler. The contrast was stark when we compared them to Sarah's references. Her character witnesses spoke in generalities about her commitment to excellence and dedication to family values, but none of them mentioned specific interactions with Tyler or knowledge of her parenting abilities. Notice what's missing, Linda pointed out. None of Sarah's references actually address her relationship with Tyler or her qualifications as a mother. They're all about her professional achievements and social contributions. The most powerful support came from an unexpected source. Father Miguel from St. Catherine's, where Tyler and I occasionally attended Sunday service, had written a letter that captured something profound about our relationship. I have observed Marcus and Tyler Thompson over the past 2 years, and their bond is evident to anyone who takes the time to look. Marcus brings Tyler to church not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to share his values and provide spiritual guidance. Tyler clearly feels safe and loved in his father's presence. As a man of faith, I believe children belong with parents who nurture their souls as well as their physical needs. Marcus Thompson is such a parent. But perhaps the most moving testimony came from Tyler's Little League coach, Bob Martinez, who'd known us for 3 seasons. Marcus never missed a game or practice unless he was working, Bob wrote. He was always encouraging, not just to Tyler, but to all the kids on the team. After games, Tyler would run to his dad first, not for praise or rewards, but just to share the experience. That's love, pure and simple. The petition grew longer each day as word spread through our community. The librarian where Tyler and I spent Saturday mornings added her name. The crossing guard from his school wrote a paragraph about how Tyler always waved and smiled. Even the postal worker who delivered to our building noted Tyler's politeness and obvious contentment. This is what real community looks like, Mrs. Chen said when she brought me the final petition, now 3 pages long with over 50 signatures. Not money, not big houses, people who care about each other, who look out for children. I read through each signature, each comment, each heartfelt endorsement of the life Tyler and I had built together. These people didn't know Sarah's lawyers or care about Richard's political ambitions. They knew Tyler really knew him. They understood what would be lost if he were torn away from the community that had helped raise him. The support gave me strength, but it also brought home the stakes of what we were fighting. This wasn't just about a custody battle between 2 parents. It was about whether genuine care and community connection could stand against wealth and legal manipulation. As I looked at the petition signed by neighbors and teachers, I realized we had something Sarah's team couldn't buy or manufacture: the authentic testimony of people who had witnessed love in action, day after day, for 3 years. That had to count for something. Jake's call came on a Thursday evening while Tyler was doing homework at the kitchen table. His voice carried an excitement I hadn't heard before. "Marcus, you need to get down here. I've found something big." I arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch Tyler and drove to Jake's office, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Jake was spread bank records across his desk like a detective solving a murder case. "I told you rich people always have secrets," Jake said, grinning. "Well, Sarah's secret is that she's not as rich as she pretends to be." He showed me financial documents that painted a very different picture of Sarah's situation. Despite her designer clothes and expensive lifestyle, her personal bank statements revealed a troubling pattern of debt and financial instability. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a series of credit card statements. "She's maxed out on every account. Department store cards, luxury retailers, even cash advances. She's living completely beyond her means." The numbers were staggering. Sarah owed over $60,000 in credit card debt, had 3 car loans for vehicles that cost more than my annual salary, and was behind on payments to several high-end boutiques and spas. "But here's the kicker," Jake continued, pulling out another document, Richard's prenuptial agreement. I read through the legal language with growing amazement. The prenup was ironclad and specific: if Sarah and Richard divorced within the first 5 years of marriage, she would receive only a modest settlement, barely enough to cover her existing debts. But there was a crucial clause buried in the fine print. "Look at Section 12, Jake said, pointing to a highlighted paragraph. "If they have or adopt children together during the marriage, the financial terms change dramatically. She'd be entitled to substantial spousal support, property division, and ongoing financial security." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Tyler isn't her son to hurt. He's a financial instrument. Exactly. Richard can't have biological children. I confirmed that through medical records his first wife filed during their divorce. Sarah needs Tyler to secure her financial future. Jake showed me more evidence: email communications he'd somehow obtained between Sarah and her personal financial advisor, discussing her dire financial situation and the urgent need to secure long-term stability. One email was particularly damning. "The prenup situation is untenable unless we can demonstrate a committed family unit. Tyler's integration into our household would fundamentally alter the financial arrangements and provide the security we've discussed." "She's not trying to be Tyler's mother," I said, the full scope of her plan becoming clear. "She's trying to use him to secure a meal ticket." But Jake had found something even more devastating. Richard's own financial records showed that his political campaign had hired a family image consultant, paying significant fees for family integration strategy and child-inclusive campaign planning. They've been planning this for months, Jake explained. Look at these consultant reports. The documents outlined a detailed strategy for incorporating Tyler into Richard's political image photo opportunities, campaign events, carefully scripted family moments designed to project traditional values and family stability. Tyler would become a campaign prop, I said, reading through the recommendation. Every aspect of his life would be managed for political benefit. And here's the smoking gun, Jake said, producing a bank statement that made my blood run cold. Sarah took out a loan last month to pay for this custody battle, a significant loan. But look at the collateral. The loan documents showed that Sarah had used her expected settlement from Richard contingent on successful child integration as collateral. She'd literally bet Tyler's custody on her ability to manipulate the financial terms of her marriage. She's desperate, Jake explained. Without Tyler, she faces financial ruin. With Tyler, she secures her future, and Richard gets his perfect political family. It's a business transaction disguised as maternal love. The bank records told the entire story. Sarah's spending had accelerated dramatically after Richard announced his political intentions. Designer clothes for campaign events, expensive treatments to maintain her appearance, luxury purchases to fit into Richard's social circle, funded by credit and the promise of future financial security through Tyler. There's more, Jake said, producing one final document. I found records of Sarah's communications with a private adoption agency. I stared at the papers in disbelief. Sarah had contacted an adoption agency 6 months ago, inquiring about expedited placement procedures for politically connected families. She'd been planning to acquire a child, any child, to fulfill the prenup requirements before settling on pursuing Tyler. This proves Tyler isn't special to her, Jake said. He's just the most convenient option because she already has a legal connection to him. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. Sarah's sudden maternal instincts weren't maternal at all, they were financial desperation dressed up as family reunification. Tyler was a pawn in a larger game of money, politics, and social climbing. Will this hold up in court? I asked. Jake nodded grimly. These are official financial records, legal documents, verified communications. Sarah's own paperwork condemns her. She's not fighting for Tyler because she loves him. She's fighting for him because she needs him to avoid bankruptcy and secure her marriage. As I drove home that night, the bank records in my passenger seat felt like a weapon of truth. For months I'd felt helpless against Sarah's wealth and legal resources, but money and lawyers couldn't explain away the cold calculation revealed in those financial documents. Sarah had made a critical error. She'd left a paper trail that exposed her true motivations. Now we had proof that this custody battle was never about Tyler's welfare, it was about Sarah's survival. Tyler had been quieter than usual in the days leading up to the final custody hearing. He'd started carrying his journal everywhere, writing in it with an intensity that worried me. When I asked what he was working on, he'd just say, a letter, but wouldn't elaborate. The breakthrough came on a Saturday morning. Tyler had gone to Sarah's house for what was supposed to be a routine supervised visit, but he came home 2 hours early, his face pale and his hands shaking. Dad, he said, climbing into my lap on the couch. I need to tell you something important. I held him close, feeling the tension in his small body. What happened, buddy? I heard Mommy talking on the phone, Tyler said quietly. She didn't. No, I was there. I was supposed to be in the playroom, but I came to get some water. He pulled out his journal and opened it to a page covered in his careful third-grade handwriting. At the top, he'd written letter to the judge in his best penmanship. I wrote down what she said, Tyler continued, because I thought it was important. What Tyler had overheard would change everything. Sarah had been on a conference call with Richard and their campaign manager, discussing the custody case, as if Tyler were a business acquisition rather than a child. She said I was the missing piece. Tyler read from his journal, his voice getting stronger as he continued. She said that having me would make Richard look like a family man, and that families win elections. I listened in amazement as Tyler recounted the conversation with startling accuracy. He'd written down phrases that an 8-year-old couldn't have invented. Political asset, family values, demographic, securing the conservative vote. Then Richard said something about money. Tyler continued reading. He said that once I was living there, Mommy would get more money because of some paper they signed. She laughed and said she wouldn't have to worry about paying her bills anymore. The innocence in Tyler's voice as he read these calculated statements was heartbreaking. He was trying to make sense of adult corruption that even I found difficult to comprehend. But the worst part, Tyler said, looking up at me with eyes that seemed too old for his face, was when she said she was glad I was smart because that would make the pictures look better. Pictures, Tyler nodded solemnly. For Richard's campaign, she said I was photogenic and that people would believe they were a real family. She said I just had to be quiet and do what they told me during the picture times. I held Tyler tighter, feeling rage and protectiveness surge through me. Sarah had been discussing my son like a prop, a marketing tool to enhance her husband's political image. There's more, Dad, Tyler said, turning the page in his journal. I kept listening because I didn't understand why they were talking about me like that. Tyler had heard them discuss the timeline for the custody transition, the private school enrollment, and most disturbing, the behavior modification they'd planned if Tyler had trouble adjusting to his new role. They said if I missed you too much, they'd get me a counselor to help me understand why living with them was better. Tyler read. Mommy said I'd learn to appreciate the opportunities they could give me. The clinical coldness of their planning was chilling. They'd already mapped out Tyler's emotional manipulation, treating his love for me as a problem to be solved rather than a bond to be respected. Dad, I don't want to live with them, Tyler said, closing his journal. I know they have a big house and lots of money, but they don't love me. They just want me for their pictures. I was amazed by Tyler's clarity. At 8 years old, he'd seen through their manipulation with the wisdom that came from genuine experience of what love actually looked like. I want to tell the judge what I heard, Tyler said with determination. I know I'm just a kid, but I can tell the truth. The letter Tyler had written to the judge was remarkable in its simplicity and honesty. Dear Judge, my name is Tyler Thompson, and I am 8 years old. I love my dad and I want to keep living with him. My mom left when I was little, and now she wants me to come live with her. But I heard her talking and she doesn't really want to be my mom. She wants me for other reasons that I don't understand but I know aren't about loving me. My dad loves me every day, not just for pictures. Please let me stay with him. Thank you. Tyler, this is very brave, I said, reading his letter. But I want you to know that telling the truth might be hard. The lawyers might ask you difficult questions. Tyler nodded seriously. I know, but lying would be harder. Mrs. Peterson always says we should tell the truth, even when it's scary. That evening, I called Linda to tell her about Tyler's letter, and what he'd overheard. Her response was immediate and excited. Marcus, this changes everything. Tyler's testimony about what he heard could be the evidence we need to expose their true motivations. But I was torn. The last thing I wanted was to put Tyler in the middle of an adult conflict. I don't want him to feel responsible for this decision. He won't be responsible, Linda assured me. He's just telling the truth about what he experienced. That's what children are supposed to do, trust adults to protect them and speak honestly about their needs. Tyler had already made up his mind. Over the next few days, he practiced what he wanted to say to the judge, speaking with a maturity that both impressed and saddened me. He wasn't angry at Sarah or trying to hurt her. He was simply stating facts about what he'd heard and how it made him feel. I don't hate Mommy, Tyler said during one of our conversations. I just don't think she wants to be my real mom, and I already have everything I need with you. The night before the hearing, Tyler asked if he could sleep in my bed. As he drifted off to sleep, he whispered, Dad, tomorrow I'm going to be brave like you taught me. I watched his peaceful face in the dark, marveling at the courage of this small boy who was willing to speak truth to power, who understood love well enough to recognize its absence. Tomorrow, Tyler would find his voice, and the truth would finally be heard. The courtroom was packed when we arrived that morning. Sarah sat at the plaintiff's table with her 3 attorneys, looking every inch the successful professional in her navy suit and pearl earrings. Richard was beside her, projecting the kind of confident authority that came from a lifetime of privilege. Their side of the courtroom was filled with character witnesses, prominent community members, political allies, and social connections. Our side looked different. Linda sat alone at the defendant's table with her single briefcase and court-appointed determination. Behind us sat Mrs. Peterson, Murphy, Mrs. Chen, and a dozen other people who knew Tyler and me, not as abstractions, but as neighbors, friends, and family. Judge Patricia Morrison entered with the kind of stern demeanor that suggested she'd seen every custody battle tactic in the book. She was in her 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with a reputation for cutting through legal theater to focus on children's actual welfare. This is a petition for modification of custody regarding Tyler Thompson, age 8. Judge Morrison began consulting her notes. I've reviewed all submitted materials, character references, and financial disclosures. Today we'll hear testimony from both parties and any relevant witnesses. Sarah's attorney, Patricia Sterling, rose with practiced confidence. She was everything I'd expected: polished, intimidating, and skilled at making poverty sound like child abuse. Your Honor, this case is about providing Tyler Thompson with the opportunities and stability he deserves. Ms. Mitchell Blackwood has transformed her life. Achieving professional success and financial security, she can offer Tyler educational advantages, cultural enrichment, and social opportunities that his current situation simply cannot provide. Sterling painted a picture of Tyler's life with Sarah that sounded like a luxury brochure. Private school with small class sizes, tutoring in multiple subjects, piano lessons, tennis instruction, summer camps, and exposure to influential community members who could guide his future development. Tyler would have his own bedroom, his own bathroom, and access to resources that could unlock his full potential. Sterling continued, Mr. Thompson, while well-meaning, simply cannot compete with the advantages Ms. Mitchell Blackwood can provide. She called character witnesses who spoke glowingly about Sarah's transformation, her dedication to her career, and her commitment to family values. Richard testified about their stable marriage, their beautiful home, and their eagerness to provide Tyler with every opportunity for success. Then Sarah took the stand. She looked perfect, composed, articulate, and convincingly maternal. Sterling guided her through prepared answers about her regret over the time she'd lost with Tyler, her growth as a person, and her deep desire to be the mother Tyler deserved. I was young and overwhelmed when Tyler was born, Sarah said, her voice carrying just the right note of vulnerability. I made the difficult decision to step back until I could provide the kind of life I wanted for my son. Now I'm ready to give him everything: love, stability, and opportunities that will serve him for the rest of his life. It was a masterful performance, hitting every note that would appeal to a family court judge. Sarah spoke about wanting to help Tyler with homework, attend his school events, and watch him grow into a successful young man. Linda's cross-examination was limited by our resources, but she managed to expose some cracks in Sarah's narrative. Ms. Mitchell-Blackwood, you say you stepped back to provide better for Tyler. During the 3 years you were absent, how often did you contact him? Sarah hesitated slightly. I thought it would be less confusing for Tyler if I waited until I could offer him a complete new life. So the answer is never. You never called, never sent a birthday card, never asked about his school performance or health. I believed it was best for Tyler's emotional stability. Linda pressed on. And this sudden desire for custody coincides with your husband's political campaign, doesn't it? Sterling objected, but Judge Morrison allowed the question. I resent the implication that my maternal feelings are connected to politics, Sarah said, but her composure cracked slightly. When it was our turn, Linda called our community witnesses. Mrs. Peterson testified about Tyler's academic success and emotional stability. Murphy spoke about my reliability and Tyler's obvious happiness. When he came to the shop, Mrs. Chen described our daily routines and Tyler's polite, well-adjusted behavior. Then I took the stand. I wasn't polished like Sarah. I didn't have prepared talking points or media training, but I had 3 years of truth to share. Tyler is my world, I said simply. Every decision I make is about what's best for him, not what looks good or what other people might think, but what Tyler actually needs to be happy, healthy, and loved. I talked about our morning routines, our homework sessions, our weekend adventures. I described Tyler's dreams of becoming a paleontologist, his kindness to elderly neighbors, his pride in making honor roll. I spoke about the life we'd built together, not perfect, but genuine. Linda asked about the sacrifices I'd made, the extra jobs I'd taken, the way I'd restructured my entire life around Tyler's needs. I'm not rich, I said. I can't give Tyler private tennis lessons or piano instruction, but I can give him something more important: a father who shows up, who listens, who loves him unconditionally. During Sterling's cross-examination, she tried to paint me as bitter about Sarah's success, jealous of her new life, and ultimately selfish for wanting to limit Tyler's opportunities. Mr. Thompson, don't you want what's best for your son? She asked. I want Tyler to be with the parent who actually loves him, I replied, not the parent who can afford the better lawyers. Then came the moment that changed everything. Your Honor, Linda said, we have one more witness. Tyler Thompson would like to address the court. Judge Morrison looked surprised. The child wishes to testify. Yes, Your Honor. Tyler has written a letter to the court and has important information relevant to this case. Sarah's legal team immediately objected, arguing that 8-year-olds shouldn't be put in the position of choosing between parents. But Judge Morrison overruled them. In custody cases involving children old enough to express preferences, I make it a practice to hear from them directly. Tyler may approach the bench. Tyler stood up from the gallery, looking small but determined. In his best clothes, he walked to the front of the courtroom with his journal clutched in his hands, his chin raised with quiet courage. Judge Morrison smiled kindly at him. Hello, Tyler. I understand you have something you'd like to tell me. Tyler nodded solemnly. Yes, ma'am. I wrote you a letter, but I also heard something important that I think you should know. He opened his journal and began to read his letter in a clear, steady voice. The courtroom was completely silent as Tyler spoke about his love for me, his happiness in our life together, and his confusion about Sarah's sudden interest in being his mother. Then, Tyler looked up from his journal and delivered the words that would expose Sarah's true motivations. Judge Morrison, I also want to tell you about something I heard my mom say on the phone. Sarah went rigid in her chair. Sterling started to object, but Judge Morrison silenced her with a look. What did you hear, Tyler? In his innocent voice, Tyler recounted the phone conversation he'd overheard. He spoke about hearing Sarah discuss him as a political asset, about the money she would receive for having a child in her marriage, and about the campaign photos that would make them look like a real family. The impact was immediate and devastating. Sarah's face had gone white, and Sterling was frantically whispering to her colleagues. Tyler, Judge Morrison said gently, are you certain about what you heard? Tyler nodded. Yes, ma'am. I wrote it down right after because I didn't understand why they were talking about me like that. I know I'm just a kid, but I know the difference between someone who loves me and someone who just wants me for pictures. Judge Morrison looked from Tyler to Sarah, her expression grave. Thank you, Tyler. You may return to your seat. As Tyler walked back to sit beside me, the courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. Sarah's perfect facade had crumbled, exposed by the honest words of the child she'd tried to manipulate. The truth was finally out. The silence in the courtroom was deafening after Tyler finished speaking. Judge Morrison studied Sarah with the kind of penetrating gaze that had unraveled countless lies over her decades on the bench. Ms. Mitchell Blackwood, Judge Morrison, said her voice, carrying a new edge of suspicion. Tyler's testimony raises serious questions about your motivations in seeking custody. Do you care to respond? Sarah had lost her composure entirely. Gone was the polished professional who had testified so convincingly minutes before. She looked trapped, desperate, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. Your Honor, Tyler is 8 years old, Sterling interjected, trying to salvage the situation. Children often misunderstand adult conversations. Any discussion about family integration in Mr. Blackwood's political life would naturally. I'm not asking you, Miss Sterling, Judge Morrison cut her off. I'm asking your client, Ms. Mitchell Blackwood. Did you or did you not discuss Tyler in terms of political advantage and financial benefit? The question hung in the air like a sword. Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, then looked desperately at her legal team, but there was no escape from Tyler's simple, devastating honesty. Your Honor, Linda stood up. We have additional evidence that corroborates Tyler's testimony. She approached the bench with Jake's financial records, the bank statements, the prenuptial agreement, and all the documentation that proved Sarah's true motivations. These documents show a pattern of financial desperation and calculated manipulation, Linda explained. Ms. Mitchell Blackwood's debts, her precarious financial situation, and the prenuptial clauses that would be triggered by child custody paint a clear picture of her actual motivations. Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence with growing displeasure. The bank records showed Sarah's mounting debts. The prenup revealed the financial incentives for acquiring a child, and the campaign documents outlined Tyler's planned role as a political prop. But Tyler had one more revelation that would seal Sarah's fate completely. Judge Morrison, Tyler said, raising his hand politely, there's something else. Judge Morrison looked at him kindly. What is it, Tyler? Tyler reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tablet, a device I hadn't seen before. When I was at Mom's house, I was playing a game on this tablet in the playroom, Tyler explained, but I forgot to turn off the recording app from my school project. When I went to get water and heard Mom talking, the tablet kept recording. But the courtroom erupted. Sterling was on her feet, objecting, but Judge Morrison was already calling for order. Tyler, are you telling me you have a recording of the conversation you described? Tyler nodded seriously. Yes, ma'am. I didn't know it was recording until later, but when I checked my school project folder, the whole conversation was there. Linda quickly moved to have the recording admitted as evidence. Despite Sterling's frantic objections about legality and privacy, Judge Morrison ruled that since Tyler had innocently captured the conversation while working on a legitimate school project, it was admissible. The recording was devastating. Sarah's voice came through clearly as she discussed Tyler's integration timeline with Richard and their campaign manager. Her words were cold, calculating, completely devoid of maternal warmth. The boy is photogenic enough, Sarah's recorded voice said, and his grades show he's intelligent, which will play well with education voters. What about the father? Richard's voice asked. Marcus won't be a problem once we establish the new living arrangement. Tyler will adapt. Children are resilient. The financial benefits kick in immediately upon custody transfer. The most damning moment came when the campaign manager asked about Tyler's emotional attachment to me. We'll deal with that through proper counseling, Sarah's voice responded. Dismissively, children learn to appreciate better circumstances. A few months of therapy, and he'll understand why this arrangement benefits everyone. Everyone, including your bank account, Richard had joked, and Sarah had laughed. The sound of that laugh, mercenary, completely indifferent to Tyler's feelings, filled the silent courtroom. Even Sarah's own attorneys looked shocked by the callousness revealed in her own words. Judge Morrison stopped the recording. I've heard enough. She looked at Sarah with undisguised disgust. Ms. Mitchell Blackwood, in 30 years on the family court bench, I have rarely encountered such a blatant attempt to exploit a child for personal gain. Your own words reveal that you view Tyler not as a son to be loved, but as an asset to be acquired. Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Your Honor, those comments were taken out of context. What context? Judge Morrison interrupted. Could possibly justify discussing a child in terms of financial benefit and political advantage? What context could make your laughter at your son's emotional pain acceptable? Sterling made one last desperate attempt to salvage the case. Your Honor, regardless of my client's poor choice of words, she can still provide superior resources and opportunities. Money does not make a parent, Judge Morrison said firmly. Love, commitment, and genuine care for a child's welfare make a parent. Mr. Thompson has demonstrated all of these qualities. Your client has demonstrated the opposite. The judge's words carried the weight of absolute authority. Moreover, placing Tyler in the custody of someone who views him as a political prop and financial instrument would constitute a form of child exploitation. Sarah was crying now, but they were tears of defeat rather than genuine emotion. The perfect image she'd cultivated had been shattered by her own recorded words and an 8-year-old's courage to tell the truth. This court finds that the petitioner's request for custody modification is not only denied but that it was filed under false pretenses. Judge Morrison declared, "Ms. Mitchell-Blackwood, your attempt to manipulate these proceedings for personal gain is reprehensible." The judge turned to me with a much warmer expression. "Mr. Thompson, it's clear that Tyler is thriving in your care. Your love for your son is evident, genuine, and exactly what Tyler needs to continue growing into the remarkable young man he's already becoming." Then she addressed Tyler directly. "Tyler, you showed tremendous courage today in telling the truth, even when it was difficult. Your father should be very proud of you." Tyler beamed at the praise, but his smile was for me, not for the judge, or the courtroom full of people. In that moment, I saw the same boy who ran to me after Little League games, who asked for help with homework, who felt safe and loved in our modest apartment. "Custody remains with the father," Judge Morrison concluded. "This case is closed." The gavel came down with finality, ending Sarah's manipulative scheme and confirming what Tyler and I had always known: we belonged together. As we left the courtroom, Sarah was surrounded by her frantic legal team, probably discussing damage control for Richard's campaign, but their whispered crisis management couldn't undo what had been revealed. Tyler had spoken truth to power, and the truth had won. The relief was overwhelming. As we walked down the courthouse steps, Tyler's small hand in mine, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. The legal nightmare was over, and Tyler was still mine, not because I'd won some competition, but because the truth had finally been heard. Linda handed me the updated custody order as we reached the parking lot. The document was simple but powerful. Full legal and physical custody remained with Marcus Thompson, with no visitation rights granted to Sarah Mitchell-Blackwood, pending her demonstration of genuine maternal commitment through counseling and supervised evaluation. "It's unusual for a court to completely cut off parental access," Linda explained, but Judge Morrison was clearly disturbed by the evidence of exploitation. Sarah would have to petition separately and prove her motivations have genuinely changed. Tyler looked up at me with those wise 8-year-old eyes. "Dad, does this mean we can go home now?" "Yeah, buddy, we can go home." The walk to our car was interrupted by Mrs. Peterson, who had been waiting with tears in her eyes. "Tyler, you were so brave in there," she said, kneeling to his level. "I'm proud of you for telling the truth." "Mrs. Peterson always says honesty is important," Tyler replied matter-of-factly, as if he hadn't just delivered testimony that dismantled a high-powered legal strategy. Murphy was there too, along with Mrs. Chen and several of our neighbors who had come to support us. Their faces showed a mixture of relief and vindication. They'd known all along that Tyler belonged with me, and now the legal system had confirmed it. But the real aftermath was just beginning to unfold. Within hours of our leaving the courthouse, Sarah's world started to collapse. Richard's law firm released a brief statement that Patricia Sterling was no longer representing clients in family law matters due to professional conduct concerns. Sterling's reputation, built over decades, had been destroyed by her willingness to pursue a case that was fundamentally about child exploitation. Richard himself distanced himself from Sarah with the speed of a practiced politician. By evening, news reports were already circulating about complications in Richard Blackwood's family situation that might affect his congressional campaign. Sarah's financial house of cards tumbled even faster. The loan she'd taken using her expected settlement as collateral came due immediately when the custody case was lost. Her credit cards, already maxed out, were frozen by concerned creditors who'd read about the court case in the newspapers. The recording Tyler had inadvertently captured became the final nail in Sarah's professional coffin. Richard's law firm, facing potential scandal from employing someone who'd tried to exploit a child for financial gain, terminated Sarah's position immediately. Effective immediately, Sarah Mitchell-Blackwood is no longer associated with this firm. Their statement read, "We maintain the highest standards of professional and personal conduct for all associates." But perhaps the most devastating consequence was the end of Sarah's marriage. Richard filed for divorce within a week, citing irreconcilable differences and fundamental disagreements about family values. The prenuptial agreement that Sarah had tried to circumvent through Tyler's custody now worked exactly as Richard had intended. She would leave the marriage with almost nothing. Tyler processed all of this with remarkable equanimity. When I explained that his mother was going through some difficult changes, he listened thoughtfully. "Is she in trouble because of what I said?" he asked. "No, buddy, she's in trouble because of what she did. You just told the truth about it." Tyler nodded seriously. "I feel sad for her, but I'm glad we get to stay together." The community support that had emerged during the custody battle didn't disappear after our victory. If anything, it strengthened. Mrs. Chen organized a small celebration at our apartment complex, with neighbors bringing food and congratulations. Murphy gave me the afternoon off to spend with Tyler, refusing to dock my pay. You've been through enough, Murphy said. Take some time to enjoy being Tyler's dad without worrying about lawyers and court dates. Mrs. Peterson stopped by that evening with a card from Tyler's entire class. Third graders don't understand custody battles, but they understood that Tyler had been worried and now wasn't anymore. Your dad must be really happy, one classmate had written. We missed you being excited about dinosaurs. Another had added. Tyler read each message carefully, his smile growing with every expression of friendship and support, but the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. Judge Morrison had sent a personal note, addressed to Tyler. Dear Tyler, your courage in speaking the truth today was remarkable. Remember that honesty, even when it's difficult, is always the right choice. Your father is lucky to have such a thoughtful, brave son. Best wishes for your bright future. Judge Morrison. Tyler read the note 3 times, then carefully placed it in his journal next to his letter to the judge. Dad, Tyler said as I tucked him into bed that night, I'm glad everything worked out, but I'm mostly just glad we don't have to be scared anymore. He was right. The fear that had dominated our lives for months, the terror of being separated, the constant anxiety about legal proceedings, the uncertainty about our future was finally gone. As I turned off the light in our shared bedroom, I looked at the divorce papers still in my kitchen drawer, the same papers I had read with such fear months ago. Now they represented something different, proof that we'd survived the worst kind of challenge a family could face. The updated custody order was more than a legal document. It was validation that love, consistency, and genuine care mattered, more than wealth or social position. Tyler was officially, legally, permanently mine. Not because I'd won a battle, but because we'd always been a family. The news about Richard and Sarah's divorce broke 2 weeks after the custody hearing. I saw it first on the morning news while making Tyler's breakfast, a brief segment about congressional candidates. Richard Blackwood's family complications, that mentioned the dissolution of his marriage due to undisclosed personal matters. What the news didn't report was the speed with which Sarah's carefully constructed world had crumbled. Jake called me with updates that painted a picture of complete collapse. She's lost everything, Jake reported during one of our conversations. The divorce is proceeding exactly as the prenup specified. She gets minimal settlement, no property rights, and Richard's keeping the house. Sarah's desperation had become increasingly evident in the weeks following the custody decision. She'd tried calling me repeatedly, her voicemail shifting from anger to bargaining to something approaching panic. Marcus, we need to talk. Her first message had said, this isn't over. I have rights as Tyler's mother, but her legal rights had been effectively terminated by Judge Morrison's ruling, and no attorney would take her case after the recorded evidence of her exploitation became public record. By the 3rd week, her messages had changed tone entirely. Marcus, please, I've lost my job. I'm losing the house. Richard won't even speak to me. I made mistakes, but Tyler is still my son. I didn't return her calls. Linda had advised against any contact outside of official legal channels. But more importantly, I could see how Sarah's continued presence was affecting Tyler. He'd started having nightmares again, worried that somehow she'd find a way to take him away. The professional consequences for Sarah were swift and devastating. News of her attempt to exploit Tyler for financial gain had spread through Richard's political circles and the legal community. Her resignation letter from Blackwood, Sterling and Associates was leaked to the press, revealing the depth of her professional disgrace due to personal circumstances that have created irreconcilable conflicts with this firm's values and ethical standards. I hereby tender my resignation effective immediately. I apologize for any embarrassment my actions may have caused to the firm's reputation, but resignation couldn't undo the damage. Sarah's legal career was effectively over. No reputable firm would hire someone who'd been publicly exposed for trying to manipulate custody laws for personal gain. Her paralegal certification was under review by the state board, which had launched an ethics investigation based on the court proceedings. The financial consequences were equally severe. Without her job, Sarah couldn't afford her lifestyle or even basic living expenses. The apartment she'd rented after leaving Richard's house was modest by any standard, a stark contrast to the luxury she'd grown accustomed to. Jake had driven past her new place and described it to me. 2-bedroom apartment in a complex that's seen better days. No doorman, no marble counters, no staff. She's basically back where she was before she met Richard, except now she's older and has a reputation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah had abandoned Tyler and me to escape a life of modest means and everyday struggles. Now, after years of luxury, she was back to that same life but without the family she'd discarded. Tyler, meanwhile, was processing the news of Sarah's situation with a maturity that both impressed and concerned me. Dad, is Mom going to be okay? He asked one evening after overhearing a phone conversation with Linda. I don't know, buddy, I answered honestly. She's going through some hard times because of choices she made. Tyler was quiet for a moment, then said, I feel sorry for her, but I'm not going to worry about it. That's grown-up stuff, and you handle the grown-up stuff. His ability to compartmentalize was remarkable. Tyler understood that Sarah's problems were consequences of her actions, not his responsibility to fix. At 8 years old, he learned a lesson about accountability that many adults never grasp. The political fallout for Richard was more manageable but still significant. His congressional campaign had been quietly suspended, with advisors citing the need to focus on personal matters during this transitional period. Translation: they were waiting to see if the scandal would fade before the next election cycle. Richard himself had emerged relatively unscathed. The recorded conversation made it clear that while he'd been complicit in the scheme, Sarah had been the primary architect. His divorce filing painted him as a victim of manipulation, and his political connections helped contain the damage. But Sarah had no such protection. She'd burned her bridges with the legal community, alienated her social circle, and lost her financial security. The woman who'd once attended charity galas and political fundraisers was now working as a clerk at a department store, barely earning enough to cover rent. It's not that I want her to suffer, I explained to Tyler when he asked about Sarah's situation, but actions have consequences. When people make choices that hurt others, especially children, they have to live with the results. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. Like when I don't do my homework and then I get a bad grade. Exactly like that, but with much bigger consequences. The most fitting consequence came when Sarah's former social circle completely ostracized her. The same women who'd praised her transformation and welcomed her into their exclusive circles now treated her like a pariah. Being exposed as someone who'd tried to exploit a child for money was social suicide in their world. One of Richard's former friends had told Jake, "We all knew Sarah married Richard for money, but trying to use a kid as a bargaining chip, that's beyond the pale. No one wants to be associated with that." Sarah's resignation letter became a symbol of how quickly privilege could disappear. When built on deception rather than genuine achievement, she'd tried to secure her future by exploiting Tyler, and instead had destroyed any future she might have had. 3 months after the custody hearing, I received one final voicemail from Sarah. Her voice was different, smaller, defeated, stripped of the confidence and entitlement that had characterized her during the custody battle. "Marcus, I know you won't call me back, and I understand why. I wanted you to know that I'm getting help, real help, not just for show. I understand now that what I did was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday Tyler might understand that I'm trying to become the person I should have been all along." I saved the message but didn't respond. Sarah's journey toward redemption, if genuine, was hers to take. Tyler and I had our own path forward, free from the chaos and manipulation that had defined her presence in our lives. The consequences Sarah faced were severe, but logically the natural result of treating a child as a commodity rather than a person. Justice hadn't required revenge. It had simply allowed truth to prevail and let Sarah's own choices determine her fate. Summer came with a sense of freedom we hadn't felt in months. Without the constant stress of legal proceedings hanging over us, Tyler and I rediscovered the simple joy of being father and son. The nightmares that had plagued Tyler during the custody battle gradually faded, replaced by peaceful sleep and morning conversations about dinosaurs and baseball. The artwork Tyler created during this period showed the shift in his emotional state. Gone were the tense, angular drawings of the custody battle period. Instead, his latest masterpiece, a crayon drawing of the two of us at the park, radiated happiness and security. He'd used every color in his box, depicting our stick figures with enormous smiles under a bright yellow sun. "This is us being happy," Tyler explained, showing me the drawing. "See, we're both laughing because we don't have to go to court anymore." I had hung the artwork on our refrigerator next to his honor roll certificate and Mrs. Peterson's encouraging notes. Our kitchen had become a gallery of Tyler's emotional journey, and this latest piece marked a new chapter. But healing wasn't just about moving forward, it was also about processing what we'd been through. Tyler had questions that deserved honest, age-appropriate answers. "Dad, why did Mom want me to live with her if she didn't really love me?" he asked one evening while we were reading together. I chose my words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes about what they think they want. Your mom got confused about the difference between taking care of someone and really loving them." Tyler considered this seriously, like how Jake Morrison wanted to help us, but we had to pay him, and Mrs. Chen helps us because she cares about us. The comparison was surprisingly astute. "That's exactly right. Your mom thought having you would solve her problems, but love isn't about what someone can do for you, it's about caring for them no matter what." These conversations became a regular part of our evening routine. Tyler needed to understand that Sarah's actions weren't a reflection of his worth, but rather a symptom of her own emotional limitations. "Am I going to see Mom again?" Tyler asked. "During one of these talks, I don't know," I answered honestly. "If she ever shows that she's learned to love you for who you are, instead of what you can do for her, then maybe. But that would be her choice to prove, not your responsibility to hope for." Tyler nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. He'd learned early that adults didn't always have perfect solutions, but that honesty was better than false reassurance. The healing process extended beyond our conversations. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a child psychologist Linda had recommended, helped Tyler process the complex emotions surrounding the custody battle. Unlike the court-appointed evaluators Sarah's team had wanted, Dr. Martinez focused on Tyler's actual well-being rather than legal outcomes. Tyler is remarkably resilient. Dr. Martinez told me after several sessions, he has a strong sense of self and clear understanding of healthy relationships. The stability you've provided has given him excellent emotional foundations. She also worked with both of us on rebuilding trust and security. Tyler had developed some anxiety about separation, worried that if he went to school or spent time with friends, something might happen to change our situation. It's normal for children who've experienced custody battles to feel insecure about their living arrangements. Dr. Martinez explained, Tyler needs consistent reassurance that your relationship is permanent and stable. We developed routines that reinforced this security. Morning affirmations became part of our breakfast ritual. Today is going to be a good day, and tonight we'll be back home together. Small promises that I always kept. I'll pick you up at 3:15 and we'll stop for ice cream. Consistent bedtime stories that ended with and Tyler lived happily with his dad, who loved him very much. The community support that had emerged during the custody battle evolved into lasting friendships. Mrs. Chen became like a grandmother to Tyler, teaching him to make dumplings and telling him stories about her childhood in China. Murphy started including Tyler in weekend projects at the shop, teaching him basic mechanical skills while I worked. Everyone needs to know how to fix things, Murphy told Tyler, showing him how to change oil. Machines break down, but with the right tools and knowledge, you can make them work again. Tyler absorbed these lessons eagerly, both the practical skills and the life wisdom they represented. He was learning that problems could be solved, that people could be trusted, and that our community was larger than just the two of us. Mrs. Peterson continued to be a source of stability and encouragement. She'd started an informal mentorship with Tyler, lending him advanced books and helping him with a summer research project about paleontology. Tyler has an exceptional mind, she told me during one of our conversations. The way he processed the stress of the custody battle while maintaining his academic performance and emotional balance shows remarkable strength. But perhaps the most important part of Tyler's healing was simply the return to normalcy. Saturday, morning pancakes without legal worries, homework help without court preparation, bedtime stories that were just stories, not discussions about grown-up problems. Tyler's laughter returned full, genuine, frequent. He started telling jokes again, usually terrible 8-year-old puns that made me groan and smile simultaneously. Dad, why don't scientists trust atoms? Tyler asked one morning over breakfast. I don't know. Why? Because they make up everything. Tyler dissolved into giggles at his own joke. These moments of pure childhood joy were healing for both of us. I realized I'd been holding my breath for months, constantly tense about legal proceedings and custody threats. Now I could exhale, relax into the role I'd always loved most, being Tyler's dad. The artwork on our refrigerator told the story of our healing journey. Tyler's latest drawing showed our apartment building with all our neighbors visible in there. Windows, Mrs. Chen cooking, Murphy working on a car, Mrs. Peterson reading. At the center, he'd drawn our window with the two of us inside, surrounded by books, toys, and his dinosaur collection. At the bottom, he'd written in his careful handwriting, "Home is where people love you." It was the most accurate definition I'd ever heard. The promotion letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in September, delivered by Murphy himself with a grin that could have lit up our entire apartment building. "Congratulations, Shop Foreman Thompson," Murphy said, handing me the official letter. "You've earned this 10 times over." I read the letter twice, hardly believing what I was seeing. The promotion came with a significant raise, better benefits, and most importantly, a more stable schedule that would give me even more time with Tyler. "What's a foreman?" Tyler asked, reading over my shoulder with the curiosity that characterized his approach to everything. "It means Dad is going to be in charge of the other mechanics," I explained. "And it means we'll have more money for things like that fossil kit you've been saving for." Tyler's eyes lit up. "Really? The deluxe one with the trilobite?" "The deluxe one with the trilobite." The promotion was more than just professional advancement. It was validation of everything we'd been through. Murphy had seen how I'd handled the stress of the custody battle, while maintaining my work performance and dedication to Tyler. Other employers might have seen my legal troubles as a liability, but Murphy had recognized my priorities as strengths. "A man who fights that hard for his kid is a man I want running my shop," Murphy explained when I thanked him. "You've got good judgment, and you know what really matters." The better financial situation meant we could finally move to a 2-bedroom apartment. Tyler was excited about having his own room, but when we toured potential places, he kept asking practical questions that showed his maturity. "Dad, will this apartment still be close to Mrs. Chen?" he asked at one showing. "And can Murphy still pick me up if you're working late?" We found a perfect place, just 3 blocks from our current building, close enough to maintain our community connections. Spacious enough to give Tyler his own space, but still within our means. The new apartment had a small balcony where Tyler could set up his dinosaur collection and a kitchen big enough for homework. Help without feeling cramped. But the most meaningful change was how Tyler approached his new independence. When we painted his room, he chose a mural of prehistoric landscapes, turning his space into a paleontologist's dream. Yet he still often chose to do homework at the kitchen table, maintaining the connection that had sustained us through difficult times. "I like having my own room," Tyler told me one evening, "but I still like being near you when I'm doing important stuff." The academic year brought new challenges and achievements. Tyler's teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, immediately recognized his potential and provided advanced materials that kept him engaged. Tyler's research project on dinosaur extinction theories won the school science fair, earning him recognition and a small scholarship for summer science camp. Tyler has exceptional analytical thinking for his age, Mr. Rodriguez told me during parent conferences. He asks questions that demonstrate real scientific curiosity, not just memorization, but beyond academics. Tyler was developing leadership qualities that impressed his teachers and classmates. He'd started a fossil club at school, teaching other kids about paleontology and organizing field trips to local museums. "Tyler has a gift for making learning exciting for other children," Mr. Rodriguez observed. "He's patient, encouraging, and genuinely enthusiastic about sharing knowledge." These developments filled me with pride, but also with reflection on how the custody battle had shaped Tyler's character. He'd learned early that truth matters, that standing up for what's right requires courage, and that genuine relationships are built on consistency rather than grand gestures. The promotion also allowed me to reduce my weekend security hours, giving us more time for adventures. We started taking monthly trips to natural history museums, fossil hunting expeditions, and educational camps that fed Tyler's scientific interests. During one trip to a dinosaur dig site, Tyler made an observation that struck me with its wisdom. "Dad, I think this is better than living in a big house," he said, carefully brushing dirt from a fossil fragment. "Rich people can buy fake dinosaur bones, but they can't buy the fun of finding real ones." His contentment with our life, not despite its modest circumstances, but because of the genuine experiences it provided, showed how completely he'd processed the values that really mattered. The promotion letter wasn't just about my career. Advancement represented our family's upward trajectory. We were building something sustainable, earned through hard work and authentic relationships rather than manipulation or exploitation. Tyler's confidence grew alongside our improving circumstances. He joined the school debate team, where his ability to present facts clearly and argue logically made him a natural performer. His experiences with the custody battle had taught him that speaking truth, even under pressure, was both necessary and powerful. Tyler has remarkable composure for his age. His debate coach told me he doesn't get rattled by aggressive questioning, and he stays focused on facts rather than emotions. But Tyler's success wasn't making him arrogant or entitled. If anything, he seemed more grateful for opportunities and more aware of how hard I worked to provide them. "Dad, thank you for making sure I could go to science camp," he said one evening, completely unprompted. "I know it costs money, and you work really hard." These moments reminded me that our struggles had produced something valuable: a child who understood effort, appreciated genuine care, and recognized the difference between earned success and inherited privilege. The promotion letter now hung on our refrigerator next to Tyler's artwork and school achievements. It represented not just my advancement, but our family's resilience and growth. We were moving forward together, building a future based on love, work, and genuine values rather than manipulation and false promises. 1 year later, I stood in the auditorium of Riverside Elementary watching Tyler receive the Outstanding Student Award for 4th grade. He looked confident and happy on that stage, his smile genuine and unforced as he shook hands with the principal and accepted his certificate. The graduation photo I took that day would become one of my most treasured possessions. Tyler in his button-down shirt and tie, holding his award, surrounded by classmates and teachers who genuinely cared about his success. But what made the photo special wasn't the formal recognition. It was the pure joy on Tyler's face, the sense of belonging and achievement that radiated from every pixel. "Dad, look," Tyler said, running to me after the ceremony. "Mrs. Johnson says I'm ready for advanced math next year, and Mr. Rodriguez wants me to help with the new fossil club." I hugged him tightly, marveling at how far we'd come. A scared, confused boy who'd testified in court had grown into a confident young man who understood his own worth and potential. The audience had included all our community supporters, Mrs. Chen beaming in the front row, Murphy wiping away tears he thought no one would notice, Mrs. Peterson glowing with teacher pride. But there were new faces: 2 parents who'd gotten to know us through Tyler's activities, teachers who'd become genuine friends, neighbors from our new apartment building who'd welcomed us warmly. Our life had expanded in ways I couldn't have imagined. During the dark days of the custody battle, "Tyler Thompson is going places," Mrs. Peterson told me after the ceremony. "But more importantly, he's going to take other people with him. That's the mark of real leadership." She was right. Tyler had indeed started leading not through authority or entitlement, but through enthusiasm and genuine care for others. His fossil club had grown from 3 interested kids to 15 regular members. He tutored struggling classmates in math and science, not because he was required to, but because he enjoyed helping others succeed. I like teaching people about dinosaurs, Tyler had explained when I asked about his mentoring activities. When they get excited about learning, it makes me excited too. This philosophy extended beyond academics. Tyler had become the kid other children turned to when they had problems, conflicts with friends, trouble with schoolwork, or fears about family situations. His experience with adult manipulation had given him wisdom about relationships that served him well in childhood social dynamics. Tyler always tells the truth, even when it's hard. One of his friends had told me during a playdate, and he doesn't make fun of people for being different. The transformation wasn't just Tyler's, it was ours as a family unit. The new apartment had become a gathering place for Tyler's friends, homework study groups, and informal fossil identification sessions. Our home felt alive with learning and laughter. Financial stability had brought opportunities I'd only dreamed of during our struggling years. Tyler's summer science camp, weekend field trips, and growing collection of legitimate fossil specimens represented investments in his education that felt sustainable rather than desperate. But perhaps the most significant change was my own growth as a father. The custody battle had tested every aspect of my parenting, forcing me to articulate and defend the love I'd always felt. Coming through that experience had given me confidence in my judgment and pride in our unconventional but strong family structure. You know, Murphy said during one of our conversations, watching you fight for Tyler changed how I think about family. It's not about having the perfect setup, it's about showing up every day with genuine love. Murphy's observation reflected a broader shift in how our community viewed family success. Tyler and I had become an example of how resilience, authenticity, and mutual support could create a thriving family environment regardless of economic circumstances. The graduation photo captured more than an academic achievement. It represented the culmination of a journey from fear to confidence, from isolation to community, from survival to genuine thriving. That evening, as we celebrated Tyler's achievement with homemade cake and dinosaur documentaries, he made an observation that perfectly encapsulated our growth. "Dad, remember when I was scared about what would happen to us?" Tyler said, settling beside me on the couch. "I don't feel scared anymore. Not about Mom coming back, not about moving, not about anything. I know we can handle whatever happens." His confidence wasn't naive optimism, it was earned wisdom. Tyler had seen his father fight for what mattered, had witnessed community support during crisis, and had learned that truth and love were more powerful than money and manipulation. "We make a good team," I said, ruffling his hair. "The best team," Tyler agreed, like paleontologists discovering important fossils together. As I looked at the graduation photo later that night, I saw not just Tyler's achievement but our collective victory. We'd survived the attempt to tear us apart and emerged stronger, closer, and more confident in our bond. The custody battle that had once threatened to destroy our family had ultimately proven its strength. Sarah's manipulation had failed not because we'd outspent her, but because we'd outloved her. Tyler's courage in speaking truth had protected not just our family, but the principle that children deserve genuine care rather than exploitation. 1 year later, Tyler was thriving academically, socially, and emotionally. I had professional stability and personal confidence. Our community had rallied around us and remained supportive. We'd built something authentic and lasting. The graduation photo would join the collection on our refrigerator visual timeline of growth, achievement, and love that told the story of a father and son who'd faced their worst fears and discovered they were stronger together than any force that tried to separate them. We'd found our happily ever after, not in fairy tale perfection, but in the victory of truth over manipulation, love over exploitation, and family bonds over financial incentives. Tyler was right, we did make the best team, and our story was just beginning.